All right, everybody. I would like to welcome you to our Canvas PD series. We have our web address right here. If you need to get access to this slide deck, there's a bit.ly right here. It is case specific. Canvas and levels are both capitalized. This is a new series that we're going to be providing every Wednesday, and we are doing two different levels, and we're going to be proceeding to 3 levels as well. My name is Carrie Kunert, and I'm joined by Chris Giles and Nicole Carter, and we are all a part of the digital curriculum TOSA team and support Canvas work throughout the district. And this session is going to work as follows. I'm doing right now the introduction to our session structure. We're going to be doing some live demo and talking specifically about engagement today, all about engagement tools within Canvas. And then we're all really excited because we have some experts, right? Teachers in the field using all of these different tools. So we'll have a panel discussion where they will share how they're utilizing it in their classrooms. And then we'll have Q&A time about engagement strategies. And as soon as we have exhausted all of that, if there is any additional time, then we can just ask any other Canvas related questions. But for the beginning part, because we are recording, we'd like to keep it limited to engagement specifically. Just so you know how it's working, we have 3 different levels and they correspond to the Canvas agreements. So we just finished, we are right now in episode 2. We just finished personalizing your homepage, which is discovery level. And right now we are in the create level, level 2 of our Canvas agreements. And it is engagement in Canvas, specifically assignments, discussions, quizzes. So this is hot linked for you. And after we finish each session, we will be going ahead and putting the recording of the session on that page. So this is going to be a slide deck that builds, and you're welcome to come back to for resources and for content. So I'm going to jump to slide 16, where we're going to talk about engagement in Canvas. And we're talking today explicitly about tools that are native to Canvas. So obviously there are many other tools that you can utilize to engage students, but today we're going to be referencing kind of these 4 biggies plus additional things as well. So the ability that you have to create a page and why you would do that and what purposes you could have for creating pages in Canvas. Creating assignments as well. So when you actually want the students to do something, to demonstrate their learning and turn something into you. Usually the assignment, the communication is just between you and the students, but you do have the ability to do some peer review. So hopefully we can talk about that as well. I think personally, one of the best features of Canvas is the ability to do a discussion, so that you can get kids talking to kids, especially during CDL. So you want them to benefit from hearing each other's responses, not just immediately to the teacher. And also quizzes. So a quick formative assessment are a way for you to gather information from your students. So these are going to be the kind of the biggies that we're referencing today amongst our panel.
Okay. So I'm just going to briefly talk a little bit about the engagement pieces within Canvas. And I think Chris found this on someone else's presentation, and we wanted to share it out with you. So you can link here to the spreadsheet that I'm going to kind of show. And I will also kind of briefly go over SAMR, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. So if you are in the slide deck, go ahead and click it open and kind of take a perusal of this spreadsheet, but I'll get to it in just a minute. At the top of the spreadsheet, it talks a little bit about SAMR. Hopefully you've had an introduction to SAMR over the last couple of years. It is not a new concept. It's not necessarily my favorite concept when we talk about tech integration, but the whole idea, and I'm going to show you this little icon or image to kind of show you what it is talking about. So when we talk about tech integration, it is a gradient that you move constantly back and forth. And I think that's the biggest piece that I want to make sure I reiterate for everyone. When we start at substitution, it's like the way that you might be integrating technology. Instead of a worksheet, you give them that same worksheet as a PDF for the kids to go through or something. So it's almost a direct substitute for what you might have done in a face-to-face classroom. Just to let you know, there's no way for a person to be functioning in the redefinition stage of tech integration 100%. There's absolutely no way. That might be something you work up towards. But I think that there's something to take away from the fact that there's nothing wrong with doing a substitution PDF worksheet, but you do kind of want to shift into, doing some modification and augmenting of what you would normally do in a face-to-face classroom with the use of technology. And that's where you're going to see more bang for your buck in terms of engagement with students. So once you understand that kind of SAMR model, then when you come into the spreadsheet, you'll notice that as they talk about each of these components within Canvas, they give you some ideas of how to maybe start with discussions and then how to ramp it up, how to build up and do things differently with just, again, the tools that come straight from Canvas. So I really love the idea of jumping in and thinking, as we've said before, we really like discussion. So how are there ways to set up our discussions so that it isn't just a writing prompt, that it's actually something that the students are engaging with, answering your prompts, but then also engaging with their peers. And so how are there ways that we can build up those skills? So I think this is a really valuable tool. So make sure you bookmark it, open it up, have access to it, and really kind of dive deep and feel comfortable with starting in substitution and maybe coming back to substitution every once in a while as you introduce new concepts, but ramping up and building towards doing a more in-depth style of discussion or page or whatever. So I don't know if anyone else on the team has something else to say or add to that. Chris, you were seeing this live as someone was presenting it to you. So I don't know.
Yeah, this is it's in a Canvas course that I'm actually taking. It's actually, I think I have assignments, I have homework due this week. But what I love about it is they really took for lack of a better term, the crosswalk. Basically, how do we engage technology in purposely useful technology with Blooms and all the different tech tools in Canvas? And I love it because they've done an amazing job of how and why I would choose these different tools. And I wrote down, Carrie and I and Nicole, and I don't know who else, are in this book study using what is it called, the online playbook, whatever it is, a digital playbook. But anyways, I wrote in the chat, design tasks with engagement in mind. And I think that's a good starting point, is if we do want to engage students, we create those things with the engagement in mind. And so anyways, what Nicole is showing right here, you have a chance to look at it. It is truly a really well done piece of work.
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime thank you for reminding me about the Blooms piece, because oftentimes we forget about it, but I think at the top of the pillar becomes this creation, student creation. So it's less creation from your perspective as the teacher and giving the reins over to the student. So for example, as we look at the pages example, the redefinition is allowing students the ability to edit a page and create a page, create content where students are allowed to show what they know. So, I mean, it's that kind of thing, but I think that this gives you even more opportunity to rethink the tools that are inherent and native to Canvas without having to go outside of Canvas and pull lots of other things. So I think this is a really helpful addition. So that's, I think, all we had planned, and we wanted to give the bulk of the time to teachers. So I'm going to stop sharing and pass it over to Chris.
Awesome. So what we're going to talk about is just we've asked a few teachers to connect with us as far as who's using, again, the technologies that are inherited with Canvas. That's really our focus today. We'll talk about other tools in coming sessions. But Kim, I invited Kim here because Kim has been using quizzes in her class. She teaches world language. So I want Kim to have a chance to introduce herself and where she teaches and what she teaches, but definitely to speak to how she uses specific quizzes and then discussions, Kim, in your class.
Hi, I'm Kim Kissinger, and I teach Spanish at Mountainside High School. We separate our quizzes into the 4 modes: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And so for our listening quizzes, Chris, do you want me to show?
Yeah, if you want to share your screen, absolutely.
Okay. Examples of what we do is when we create our quizzes, we go into the assessments and we embed the questions into it. And a lot of the times we do more of the true and false and the multiple choice, especially in CDL, because that makes it a lot easier for the grading process. But we embed our questions into it. This is an example of our of a Spanish 3, and we're doing past versus present. The student has to listen to the prompt to decide whether the prompt is in the present versus the past mode. Reading quizzes, what we tend to do, and this also helps with, we have started doing our quizzes with the new quizzes, is we use the JPEGs, which makes it a lot easier not to use the translation features. For a lot of students, Google Translate, you can take a lot of text and just automatically translate the text, and it's more difficult if it is in a picture form. And so one of the things that we have been taking our quizzes is we have the students go into individual breakout rooms, and they have to share their screen. So not only are we moderating while we're doing that, but we can pop in and out of the Zooms and moderate those quizzes while they're taking the quizzes. And it definitely helps to kind of keep an eye out on what the students are doing. But
Hey, Kim, I just want to ask you a question. So just to clarify, it sounds to me like one way to avoid kids cheating using Google Translate was you were taking text and making that text an image in the quiz question instead of just putting in the text, correct?
Yes. Instead of just typing it in, that what we found is like message boards, is that when teachers were typing things in, students were able to copy and paste that into Google Translate. And so that was a lot easier to just get a translation. When it's a picture, they're not able to do that as easily.
Okay, awesome.
So,
And yeah, awesome. And then I just want to ask you just another question before we go on to, I think I'll ask Katie if she's cool to share in a second, but just if you can go back to your other quiz, I think you had videos in your quiz. So do you and your team record videos, those audio components for your students to listen to? Is that that's you and your team, or how did you guys do that part?
We do done audio, but we also do some video clips that we've taken from YouTube. One thing that I started doing this year that has worked really well for discussions is I have, and this is for just speaking, is I have started doing this for just posting like daily questions in a unit. And so the students are recording their responses, but I don't grade every student every day. I'm only doing a selection. So I'm only doing like a third of the class to grade. And so that's been working out really well to get more speaking grades in, because I can't do it every day because we don't have enough time in the regular class period. So this has helped to evaluate speaking for world language.
So I just want to talk to Gretchen or to Katie, if you don't mind. Katie, I'd asked you earlier to kind of hang out with us today, and Katie had shared how she's been using group sets in Canvas. And so Katie, if you don't mind sharing how you don't have to go through the process of creating them, but share us how you use them and then maybe the benefit you've seen from that.
Sure. So I started using groups in Canvas before CDL so that kids could turn in work as a team, something that they worked on collaboratively. But now in CDL, I use it all the time. So it's a really great resource in or out of the classroom. And what I do is I assign the kids in groups, and I have them work in these groups for a certain period of time. So I'm not changing them frequently. But if you go into the people section, you can create groups. And so I based them on the novel that we're reading right now. The next time we switch novels, they'll have new groups. And so the cool thing about that is when they go into their breakout rooms in Zoom, which you can also pre-assign the same groups in Zoom. So you can just click a button and they go into the same room each time that they meet as a team, and they work together on something. So to me, it's a big, what was a struggle at the beginning of CDL is how to create more student talk and communication. So they're not just boxes on a screen, not communicating with each other. And so this is a really great way for them to talk to each other and to work on something and to learn from each other instead of just from me. And so I'll push out an assignment. And so if you, like, here's an assignment that I assigned yesterday. And so it has the questions and what they're going to work on as a team. And I post the roles of what each person in the team does. So I posted that in Canvas. And here's their teams that are preset. And then when they go into their breakout rooms, one person, the person that is the typist, will share their screen, and they will all work together communicating and finding evidence in the text about the book and using sticky notes and talking and communicating, and they all have their cameras on and they're working together as a team. And then the cool thing about groups is when only one person needs to submit it. And then the really great benefit for that is I grade a lot less work when they're doing things as a team. So I have 7 teams. And so instead of grading, 34 separate assignments, I'm grading 7, and it pushes that grade out to each of the kids on that team. And then to keep them accountable, I usually at the end of class have them fill out a quick anonymous Google form. Well, they don't see each other's responses, kind of talking about how their team worked together that day to hold them accountable. And I pop in and I record and I share it with the other teams and stuff like that. And I know someone mentioned discussions already, but you can also use groups for discussions. And so in my reading class, I will assign a group discussion at the beginning of the week, and then they have all week to complete that discussion. And so they're on Monday, they all have to initially respond to what that question is. And then on Tuesday, they respond to another person in that group. And then on Wednesday, they respond to another person in that group. And so by the end of the week, they've had this full on discussion. They have to, by Friday, they have to reply to anything that was asked of them or commented on what they originally had. And so I'm also using those same group or, different group pairings in my homeroom class to communicate, just to have the kids talk about life and communicate with each other. And so we do that for like SEL stuff as well as academics, and you can grade them. And so when you're grading things as a group, especially with the discussion, it's really cool because it will show you what their initial response was, and then it will show you everything that they replied to somebody else. And so you can grade their whole discussion, their own piece. And so it's really nice. I love the groups in Canvas. It takes a little bit to set it up initially, but it's something that you can use for quite a while before changing teams. And it's ultimately less work for me because I grade a little bit less, and we all know that that's a huge component of teaching that is time consuming. But it also ultimately creates more student communication and talk in this crazy isolated CDL world. So
I love it.
It's
I love it,
a
Katie.
great resource.
That's awesome. Okay, so Katie had a chance to share with us how she's using groups, and I know people have had a few questions in the chat. And so, Katie, you're more welcome to respond in the chat. And then when we're finished our live session in just a few minutes, we'll have just a Q&A where everybody gets a chance to ask some questions. Katie, thank you so much for sharing. I love it. And when you're like, less work for grading, everybody's like, yeah, like who isn't even going to sign up for that? So
yeah.
Gretchen is here because she is also using discussions, and she's doing it in elementary. And I really want to hear from Gretchen and how that's happening. And so Gretchen, if you want to share your screen, feel free. Take a few minutes and just share what you've seen, what you've done, and the benefits of those.
Yeah, so I am in 4th grade, and we have been using discussions for, like she was saying, that the SEL community building. And so that's been the best part of the discussions so far. And so it's our way of interacting or responding to others. It's a good community building. So kids were able to, we did a 2 truths and a fib. And one was where they got to share videos of talents that they had. And so that has been really awesome because we don't, when they submit in assignments, they aren't able to see each other's videos. And I was using Flipgrid for them to share videos, but and they were able to comment on those, but within discussions it's able to then grade it. And so we've been using it for book discussions and being able to share like their favorite parts, or I do a read aloud and then they're able to go in and respond to each other's parts and notice like learning new things. We did a book about protesters in the United States, and the kids shared new ones that they learned about, and then they posted about it, and then they were able to go and learn from other people's what they learned as well. And then it's also just a great way for them to share their work. We started the science unit, and they were doing sketches in their journals, and then they shared their pictures on there, and they were able to share their designs for the cars they were making. So, and then also again with videos on sharing their work through that as well. I have my examples are probably not as good as what has already been shown, but I do have, this was like my talent one. So I shared my own, so you can put in directions or share your own examples, and then they can respond. I did my own like example discussion to show kind of what they could include. And then they were able to go in and like it. I didn't have very many people comment, but they then brought it up later in our Zoom with what, like they brought up one person shared a piano. He was playing the piano as one of his talents, and the kids were able to then talk about it later. So it was cool to see that transfer. Trying to think, and it is cool because you can grade, which they already talked about, but being able to then go in, and if you don't want to make everything an assignment in Canvas and rather be more, the discussions are more kind of relaxed, that is, you could use a grade for that as well in it. So yeah.
And Gretchen, how do you feel your students respond to, like, just the online discussion seems like such an adult, like grown up world, but I'm curious to know how your fourth graders have been responding to you using discussions.
Yeah, well, I would say that it's not, at this point, we haven't really gone over what would be the expectation for it, for what to include or how to respond to other people. We're kind of just getting into that, is how you can go through and respond to other people's, and giving them, last week we were working on it with giving them sentence frames of, I like how you did this, and it would help me if you tried this. So we did that with our writing when we were doing, we shared our final story, and the kids went in to read it, and then they were able to share or to say what they liked and what they could use, or like what they could work on. So it hasn't, it hasn't really grown, but they're fourth graders, so it doesn't surprise me, because even in the classroom, it takes a while for that to happen. So that kind of, at least having a place for them, it does allow those kids that do have something they want to share or do really well in front of the camera on a recording to get their kind of personalities out there. So I'm hoping to use it a little bit more with them responding and being more not just like cool or awesome, but giving more specific. And I think
I love the fact that you've given some STEM starters responses. I think that's fantastic. And just to kind of echo what you had mentioned, like, to me, a strength to Canvas discussions is it's in Canvas. Like, it's not someplace else they go to. And as a teacher, I can monitor, I can even assess, because I can create as a grading assignment if I wanted to. It doesn't have to be always about point value, but it can always be, did so-and-so respond? Are they all responding equally? Or, so I love it. And I love the fact that your students can respond by video if they want to, by text if they want to. So it's exciting to me to hear a fourth grade teacher who's like, yeah, we're doing Canvas discussions, we're rolling it out. I love it.
Yeah, and there also, one other thing is, they don't have to do a video. They could use just the voice recording, because some kids don't want to show their. I
love that idea too.
So, and then it also helps with my kids that can't, that aren't at the point where they can read or write. And so that also helps for those kids that are able to still share, even if typing is not something that is their strength. So
awesome.
Yeah.
So Carrie and Nicole, like it's 12:30, and I think we've only have 3 panels today. We've got an opportunity to hear from 3 really fantastic teachers using things in Canvas. Do you want to continue, or do we want to go ahead and pause the recording and do our Q&A?
I'd vote we go ahead and Q&A and keep the recording going if it's on this topic.
Yeah, awesome. So with that being said, I mean, I guess we could just call it open mic time, I guess. Then if you have a question, or unless
Well,
we
I
have
know
another structure.
Denise had her question about
Yes.
the grading within the discussions, right? And versus I think you wanted to see from the grade book side, Denise. Was there something that Kim was maybe doing to highlight the fact that she had only graded for that discussion these 10 kids instead of all 30, right?
Right. So when I look in the actual grade book, there's going to be a check mark or an X mark for kids who've completed or haven't completed it.
Right.
So, I'm curious how she shows that somebody completed it, but she didn't grade it. I'm assuming that, but I guess you're not really doing a grade. You're just doing complete, or how are you marking?
Okay, so here's what I do. So what I'm doing in the first discussion, for example, this is so the first third would get graded. So like this student did it. She got graded as complete. Okay, so now this student was one that was selected for grading. So she was marked as completed, but she got she got a score for it. She got a 5. She met the prompt. She needed to work on her pronunciation. She needed to add some more details, and I told her that this was a graded discussion.
I love it. So I see you're still doing complete, incomplete for everybody, but you're actually giving a point value to just some of the class. That's brilliant.
Right. Now, this is a student that did not submit a discussion, so he was marked as incomplete.
So what does that look like then for you in Synergy? When you go into Synergy and you put those grades in there, are the students who don't have an assessment for that excused so it doesn't show?
So over the whole arching of for this discussion, for this unit, so they had 6 discussions total. And so what I did was 1 through 3 was one set of discussions, and 4 through 6 was one set of discussions. And then I averaged the scores between the two, and then they got a score for Synergy. And then I put that score into Synergy.
Okay, so it was a combination of a couple of lessons. Gotcha. So there was time, by that point in time, you'd done everybody probably more than at least once. Okay.
And so there were some students that did 2 discussions, some students that only did it once, and so then there were some students that didn't do any discussion, and their score reflected that. They got a 1.
No, I think that's lovely. They get multiple opportunities, but you only have to score.
Right.
You have to scoring. That's awesome. Good
Yeah,
idea.
I mean, I don't have the time to score it 6 times.
None of us do.
I'm going to score it a couple times, but they have that opportunity to speak, to practice, and all of that, because I want to give them that opportunity to practice speaking.
Question, I think with the discussions, I think it was answered. I was thinking back to Gretchen's little presentation. Thank you for that. It looks like we can grade the discussions from what I just saw from Kimberly's example. Does that also show up in their task list or their calendar of things they need to do? So that, because I think it was Kristen who left here last week, she was saying that she doesn't have an assignment, her kids aren't going to do it because it's
as long as you give it a date.
A date. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, I really would highly recommend when you're going through and setting up discussions that you do check the little box on graded, even if you don't like give it an actual point, as Kim was kind of showing, like, you can go in and say complete or whatever. But when you turn or check that box on discussions, then it allows you to go in from a teacher's perspective into SpeedGrader, which the cool part of that within discussions is that it allows you to see one kid and every single entry. So it'll show you their answer to your prompt, whatever it might be. And then it will also show you in that same field of, window, it will show you any of their responses. So if a part of your discussion is, like answer this prompt and go and respond to 2 of your peers, it will show you in your SpeedGrader teacher view their response to the prompt and then their 2 responses to their peers. So in one fell swoop, you can see it all, instead of, if you don't check that box for grading, then you're scrolling through a quite long, threaded feed of the discussion to try and like pinpoint, okay, I've graded Alicia. Did she respond to 2 other people? Where is it? And you're trying to find it. So checking that box for graded, and also too, checking the box for threaded replies is also really good, so that so kids can see when someone responds directly to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Katie, thanks for putting the list of those the roles that you have. Those are great roles. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
And also making sure, I always make sure that they have to post first before seeing other replies, so that they have to do something first before they see anybody else.
When I saw Gretchen's and Kim's, really clear descriptions and definitions for those discussions. I want you to answer this prompt. I want you to like 3 things. I want you to respond to 2 of your peers. Really being clear in what you're asking them to do, I think is really important.
I think it's 100%. I think even, I like the idea that some teachers even just put like a little, I don't want to call it a rubric, but just like a little like, hey, here's what, if this is going to be an assessed discussion, here's the things that I'm looking for. Here's how you can assess yourself. And then I love Gretchen's STEMs. I think having STEMs in a discussion ready for students to use is a great idea.
Well, and I personally am really, really loving seeing how many people are utilizing the video recording feature within all of the different, whether it's quizzes, assignments, discussions, whatever. I'm really pleased to see that happening, because I think especially at the elementary level, when we talk about the differences between, the ease of use with Seesaw and being able to record and submit things. And we've been saying, well, you can do that in Canvas too. I'm really pleased to see that we've got teachers that are utilizing those.